Welcome to In Moderation,
the show where we give you a moderate dose of info, sarcasm, and we already know we're not approved.
I forget who he was. The mustache guy.
Yeah,
he was a vet. Oh, just the personality behind him. It was what was it, an hour 45, and it just blew by, and I was like, I got to get back to work.
Yeah.
I knew as soon as he started making content, I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast because he's gonna get a lot of gain follow.
He's gonna blow up, and he blew up.
I knew for the first video, I was like, yep, for sure. But
and now he's going all in on it.
Yeah,
good.
I mean, fucking like when it's going like that, I mean, just do it. Like, hell yeah. But anyway, I guess we should talk some fish.
I'm happy to talk fish.
Fish and chips. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast episode. It was 70
episode
last
Fish
week.
And Chips.
No, it was 70 last week because we had 69 2 weeks ago, and now it's 71. But hey, James, what's your favorite fish and chips?
Favorite?
Do you have
the
like
fried
a favorite
kind.
Okay, well, yeah, right.
I would pick it more on region, and up in like the Isle of Skye up in Scotland, that was the best fish and chips I've ever had.
How's Scotland? I want to go to Scotland. It sounds. Did you see the Loch Ness Monster? I know that's Scotland, right? I don't know things.
Loch Ness
Allegedly.
Monster and chips. There we go. Let's do it.
Oh God, it's very stringy.
No, I love Scotland. I mean, I have a lot of family from there. It's kind of like I have a kilt. That's
Nice.
come down to the generations. Oh yeah,
I like
have the
Those
tartan.
things are expensive.
What's
I
your
wanted
opinion?
one, but I'm not affording that.
What's your opinion on the bagpipe as a musical instrument?
I actually have a set that my parents got me when I was younger.
No
my
shit.
grandfather was a bagpiper.
No kidding, that's dope.
However, I never got into it.
Is it hard to
Could have
play?
been the piper for our band.
Bagpipe. On a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult is it to play the bagpipe?
It makes absolutely no sense at all. Because I used to play the saxophone back in middle school, right?
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a Q.
No, it's not on the scale. It doesn't compute.
I've always looked at him like I just don't know. Like I couldn't tell you the first thing besides like there's air and it makes it makes a noise that is divisive. How about we just put it that way? I think either you really
That's
like
a good
it
way
or
to
you
put it.
absolutely hate it.
Well, back in the days, they were for war, so it makes sense.
I didn't even know that. Well, did you try and terrify your enemy with the worst sounding instrument you could get, or what was
Exactly. The Scots would
if you
roll
have a
up
wall
some
of Scotsmen,
mud and put it in their ears and just let her wail.
It scared me off.
Oh gosh, that's funny. But anyway, besides bagpiping, what do other people know you for, James? Maybe you should introduce yourself.
Yeah, my background. Okay. So I'm James Sibley. I run the social media channels under Sibley Aqua and my own name, namely on TikTok and Instagram. I also do some stuff on LinkedIn that's more kind of directed at the industry. And that industry is aquaculture. So the farming of fish, shellfish, bivalves, algae, anything that's in the water, if it's farmed, is under the aquaculture umbrella. And I began what I do online, kind of showing people what that is a couple of years ago. But I've been doing seafood content for over 4 years. Seafood's kind of my whole thing. Wearing on podcast they can't see it, but it's a fish shirt. It's most of my my dresser, and so I'm really passionate about this space. Right? I see it as kind of the future of sustainable protein.
Okay, what got you? I was going to ask you what got you into seafood and fish.
Yeah, so I started out on social media just like posting stuff with my friends. Very rarely. I was not somebody who even like scrolled on any of these platforms, anything like that, right? Up until the middle of college. So I graduated last year out of Northeastern University, right in Boston. I studied genetic biology, but what I found most interesting in those studies were all of the peculiar animals and stuff that we were looking at.
Oh.
So, for instance, zebrafish are a great model organism because they are one of the fastest living and unfortunately fastest dying.
If you're going to move across the pond, you better start calling them zebra.
Yes. I hate
working.
that so much.
I gotta work on
I cannot
that. Yeah,
describe to you in words how much I fucking hate that. Go ahead, James. You can keep.
No, Liam's mentioning, we can get into this, Rob is mentioning, but I can get into it later. I'm moving to Scotland. Not to circle back on that quite yet, but I'll finish up my interest in fish and the likes. Right. So, zebrafish are great. They're the fastest living vertebrates. So it's a great model organism.
What's a typical life cycle or lifespan for a zebrafish?
Half a year. So it puts mice to shame. Yeah.
Yes, because I know mice are generally studied because of that, but I don't know how long a mouse lives, but I know it's generally longer than that.
It's like a lot of it's
up
like
until my cat gets
3
them.
years. Yeah. So, and this is true across the study of genetics. We really look to other organisms for how they do it, right? There's technically immortal things in the oceans, and there's all sorts of regenerative things in the oceans, and things like planaria, which are these kind of like flatworms, and you can cut them in half and now there's 2, or cut them in 4 pieces and now there's 4. And they're just a great organism to study if you want to get into regeneration, serious injury recovery medicines, some of the cutting edge stuff there. But I mean, I was sitting in class, and the thing I was most interested in was the actual marine life itself, right? I just found everything from axolotls to these flatworms.
Axolotls are so cool. Like, I don't know why. They're
It's
just
also
like
the best name ever.
It's a great name. It's a
Try
great.
and spell that.
It's not a fish. It's an
amphibian.
What is an axolotl? Amphibian.
But it's kind of like a stunted amphibian because they are fully aquatic. Kind of interesting. It's like a tadpole with legs for their entire life.
Yeah, they're super cool. I've wanted to get one, but I hear it's like tough to keep them alive, and maintenance is a little bit more difficult.
They're a very fragile organism. I worked in a lab at Northeastern where they had 600, and they're a tool for genetic studies because their immune system is innately compromised, kind of, not in a bad way necessarily, but in a way where you can take the arm off one and stick it on another, and it just works.
What?
So you can do all these graftings, and their
No
genes
kidding.
are really malleable, is a way to put it. So you can make them. If you look up GFP axolotl, spell that. That's green fluorescent protein. They're glowing in the dark, and we can use this to identify all sorts of phenotypes that we want to discover or explore in these vertebrate organisms. But anyways, I digress. Was doing all this stuff with marine life, but I didn't know that the ocean was really a path that I could pursue properly in the world, and outside of being a true marine biologist. But during COVID, I took a year off of school because YouTube school I love YouTube. I don't like watching lectures on YouTube. I end up on deep dives, like the 15 worst tech products of the year. So that wasn't working. So I took the year off, kind of returned to my roots. I'm from a farm town in Massachusetts, and I used to work the farms in the summers in high school. And when COVID hit, it was the middle of the winter. Couldn't exactly go out to the farms, or I'd just be sitting in the snow. So the next closest thing was a fishmonger job I just picked up at night, closing shifts at Whole Foods, working the fish counter. And I immediately fell in love with the space for a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, it's this hands-on work. You really see the fruits of your labor at the end of the day. Not quite like seeing the fruits of your labor at the end of picking fruit on a farm, but it was really fascinating to me to see, here's 70% of our world, and we don't really know what's going on out there, but we drag nets and we put it up for sale. And I was immediately inundated with questions, about everything about seafood. It's really one of the most foreign foods to most people, especially in the Western world, away from the coasts, as city folk.
Landlocked areas, yeah.
Mm-hmm. People don't really understand it a lot, and that leads to a lot of, misinformation going around, and just general lack of knowledge and lack of confidence at the supermarket, grocery stores, restaurants.
Sorry, I didn't. I just had
We'll
to
get
sneeze.
we'll get into the things for sure. But so you got a discount at Whole Foods, and you started shopping there, right? Gotcha.
Oh, no. I mean, I got a 20% discount, still much more expensive than elsewhere.
I was kind of actually curious how much it was, and was it worth it? Yes and no. Got it.
Yeah. It was a great introduction, but I started making these TikToks there because it was the middle of COVID. My friends couldn't make fun of me for being on TikTok. It was a great outlet, a creative outlet for me, right? I was recording stuff at work and talking about just basic seafood facts like, hey, there's multiple species of salmon that you can run across in stores. Here's what that means. Or you buy oysters alive. Why is that? Right. Those are some of my first videos. They're awful in my, I would voice them over like
all
on
our
breaks
first
or in my
videos
car,
are awful.
you know?
Right.
Yeah. But people resonated with my enthusiasm and like my kind of approachable scientific approach. That's a sentence for you. So it kind of started blowing up a bit. You know, I got up in like the 20, 30, 40,000 followers on TikTok, which I was really proud of at the time. Whole Foods was not thrilled about that, right? For obvious reasons, right? I'm in the attire. I got the logo on me. And
really,
none of this
I don't
is
know why
sanctioned.
they didn't like it. I feel like that's just like advertising. Like, look at our fish, and people are like, oh, I'll go to Whole Foods and get a fish. I guess I don't know. Whatever.
Oh, that was I thought I was doing them nothing but good. I guess it just, you know, it wasn't clean washed by them. You know, it wasn't going through corporate, all that.
Yeah,
I guess so.
A lot of corporations, they don't want content on the internet that they don't have control over.
Yeah, my manager was like, maybe don't film at work just in case. I'm like, I'm not really doing anything. They're like, don't. I'm like, all right, fine, that's cool, whatever.
Yeah, so that was the, you know, I was facing this issue where like, okay, I'm starting to gain some traction online. I don't really know what that means. TikTok's like new, but I'm really enjoying this, right? It's like suddenly the best parts of my day were filming at work and figuring out what it is I can make a video on later. And I'd base it all on consumers' questions and like my own interests, right? Because I was kind of like the front lines of the questions in the seafood world. So I really knew what people were interested in. Plus, I was new to it, right? I didn't grow up in like a fishing family or anything. I came in just interested in seafood. I didn't know much about it. So it was really kind of like starting from the top and working my way down. So I went out on a limb and said, you know what? Okay, if you don't want me to film, that's fine. I'm going to go find somebody who will let me film.
Okay.
So I moved on to a local distributor in Boston just for seafood. And that's really where things took off. That was Foley Fish in Boston. They've been around for over 100 years. And I worked for the Foleys, kind of in this internship role where they didn't really understand what I did online too much, but they saw the benefits broadly.
Right, it doesn't matter.
And
It's
said,
fine.
you know what, just do your thing, right?
You're a young kid, whatever. Internet, sure, got it. Right.
Yeah. And that creative freedom let me just run with it. That's when I shot up from like 40,000 followers up to like 300 and 350,000 on TikTok. And it's where I found my love of aquaculture, right? So in the seafood realm, there's two ways to get your hands on seafood. Well, three today, but the two big ones are wild caught and farm raised. Mm-hmm. And then there's cultivated meats, right? So like lab grown meats. Fascinating
right. I was going to ask, I was like, what's the, I only know those two ones. Okay.
Yeah. There are some companies, there's some pretty cool ones out there doing it, but not quite commercially viable yet. But anyways, working in this space, I got to see those end products from the fisheries and the farms hands on. And I just had so many questions about aquaculture. Like, how does this work? People were farming the ocean. I really had no idea to what degree, what species, why. Why do we need to? All of these things that I just started diving at.
Do they have John Deere tractors?
Some do. Some do.
There we go. Now we know.
Yeah. Right. Some of them are quite literally farming the ocean like that. So I kind of fell down that rabbit hole of aquaculture. And that's when I started to get a lot of attention online, even more than just because I was making like seafood content, like a lot of people do, but nobody was talking about aquaculture the way I was, right? I was interested in it. I was positive about the potentials of this space. But by and large, aquaculture faces negativity online. Just the concept of farming in the ocean is too foreign to people.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
Yeah.
And so that's when I doubled down. I said, you know what? I want to learn everything about this, and I want to visit these farms. I want to see what's going on. I want to learn like what's in the feeds, all these things about pollutants, contaminants, what's true, what's not, where in the world this is happening, who it's affecting. And that's where I stand today. So now I'm on Instagram, TikTok, a few other platforms like that, making long form. Most of my videos are at least 2 minutes nowadays. Really highly edited content, all about educating on aquaculture. I just came back from my most recent visit was to Hawaii, where they have an offshore kampachi farm. It's a tropical whitefish in the area, delicious for sashimi. So I was just eating that every day, probably an entire fish a day. And it was fascinating, right? An offshore cage floating off the coast of the Big Island, Hawaii.
Right. I mean, I would love to get into, because I mean, you see this stuff all the time. Like, maybe give us like the top 3 misconceptions that you see all the time, you know, that you see a lot of, I guess, and maybe just like, because I'm sure these are things you have to go over, you know, again and again. So I just want to like kind of hit the bigger ones. I'm kind of curious, like your take. What are like some of the biggest ones that you see a lot?
Yeah, so I think I've followed both of you for a long time because we're in relatively similar spaces. But I think both of you picked up on my content when I made a video about astaxanthin. It wasn't my first, but it was definitely one that took off the most.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Astaxanthin is part of this conception that a lot of farmed fish is dyed in color.
So if you see a salmon in a pink color, you know, the old people say like, this isn't its real, quote unquote, real color. It's fed, or it's dyed, or it's something else. Yeah, you go ahead. Explain what it actually is.
The legislative landscape in the past 40 years has led to a lot of governments requiring a color added label when they used astaxanthin in the feed. Astaxanthin is a carotenoid, and it's found naturally in salmon. It's what gives most marine carnivores, pelagic carnivores, that kind of pinkish, orangey color. Everything from lobsters to shrimp to all the salmonids, right? Not just salmon itself, but rainbow trout, all sorts of other kinds of trout.
As well as plenty of things on land. When you hear carotenids, just think carrots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, flamingos.
Flamingos, yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing in salmon and with farms, but they can control the amount of astaxanthin that they are using. So they have these things. It's called a SamoFan. Kind of fun to look up, where they can choose the color of their salmon based on how much astaxanthin. So
it's like a Lowe's card where they give you a bunch of different colors, and you're like, offshoot pink, that's what I want, or like
exactly. No, it's like the farmers will be like, I want 24. That's the color I want.
And I was hoping they'd have cool names like, you know, hot pink shorts, or I don't know. Go ahead.
Bubblegum pink.
I like that.
And it's something that, you know, kind of just got perpetuated because they have to say color added in a lot of places. And, you know, just because it's a color and an additive in a feed doesn't make it a dye. It's actually an essential, like, it's not used in salmon feeds because it's, you know, changes the color of the meat. It's used because it's part of their natural diet. Without it, they are immunocompromised.
Okay.
So it's just as important as a host of other nutrients in their diets.
So, you know, wild salmon will get it from their feed, just from eating other small creatures and things like that.
Exactly. And the color varies quite greatly. You might see some sockeye salmon that's as bright red as can be. And there's even salmon that's white because they don't have a lot of astaxanthin, or they have a genetic variation where it doesn't convert into that color. It's called ivory salmon. It's pretty interesting. It's pure white. So farmers control it. So all of it is exactly the same color from any specific farm.
Right.
And
so it is color added, but it's added with the thing that they would normally be getting, and it's not some I don't know, plot to I don't know. There's always something. I feel like
there is.
And to answer everybody's question, yes, if you ate enough carotenoids, you too would turn orange.
Yeah, it's called caroteniemia.
Caroteniemia, because I've looked this up between carrots. You know, if you eat enough carrots and sweet potatoes, like your skin will turn like a orangish, but it happens more in like places where skin is thicker because it can build
like
up
joints
there.
And stuff.
So like your palms of your hands, even your nose can turn a little bit, you know, more orange before the other ones. So people will do it to try and get this like, you know, glow, I guess. I don't know. You describe it like this suntanned look, but then it can kind of go sideways.
Oh yeah, I mean, I take astaxanthin supplements from it's produced by algae. So I visited this microalgae farm in Hawaii that grows them on land in these big cultivating pools. And, they sell them off as supplements. And I like the concept, right? Microalgae supplement, sure. Why not? If it can help me not look as translucent as I do, I'll give it a shot.
If it's good for salmon, it's good for me. Like, why not? I want to look like a flamingo. They look super cool. My legs are about as thin as their legs. I mean, I'll give it that. I usually stand on one. My calves, at least, are about as thin as a flamingo's. I hear that on the internet. But anyway.
Really?
Sometimes you just got to embrace it. But anyway, okay, so yeah, astaxanthin, that's one, I say, because I showed a video from yours because it was Bobby in the grocery store like, this color's fake, buy my supplements instead. And I was like, actually, like, no, it's cool. But yeah, another one I see all the time, like I'm assuming this would be in the top 3, is just like farm raised salmon has like, what is it, sea lice and a whole bunch of other dirty things. Like, I hear that all the time. Let's go with that one. What's up with the sea lice and the farm fish?
What's up with the sea lice?
What's up? It's
like I'm back in my comment section.
On Facebook warriors are like, no, you have to get wild caught because farm raised is filled with lice and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. So sea lice are a big issue. They are a macroparasite that latches on to not just salmon, but a lot of different species of similar pelagic fish. Many species of salmon get affected by them. They're kind of like a tick. So both in size and in function, they latch on, they just suck on the things. They're found naturally all over. And essentially there's a healthy amount, which we deem as what we find in the natural world, places where we don't have a lot of human involvement at all. So there is a healthy balance between sea lice and salmonids, salmon family of fish. And it makes perfect sense, right? All things in the balanced natural world have predators and parasites, pathogens.
So if like all the sea lice went away, do you think that would that kind of throw off the what is it, the ecosystem or whatever? Like if we were just like got rid of all sea lice, you think that would cause problems?
Oh, we can't do that. No.
Yeah.
I mean, if we took the nuclear approach to everything, who knows?
I see that a lot. People are like, this is bad, let's just get rid of it. And then you're like, oh, that would actually cause X, Y, and Z, and that would be a big problem.
Yeah. So you can't really do it feasibly in a way that wouldn't be extremely destructive. So it's all about keeping lice levels at a healthy limit. Now, where that plays into farms is that farms, obviously, you have a lot of salmon. You can have 50,000, 100,000 salmon in these sets of pens. It's all heavily regulated by government.
How big would be like a pen on average? How large are we talking here?
Yeah, so they vary by species, by farm, but I was just up at some in Newfoundland recently, up in your territory, Rob, and they were 125 meters across by 25 meters down. Okay. So whatever that is
it's in freedom units, I'm not really sure, units, but yeah, that's what it's 100. I'm about to just hit Google. Go ahead.
And that's on the larger side. There are pens that are 100 meters, 80 meters across. It all depends on the location. Sometimes it's better to have big pens or small pens. They can be squares. They can be circular. The depth
410 feet for any of our American listeners.
Freedom units. So that's kind of the size of pens we're talking here. And they typically link them up. So you'll have a big barge, like semi-permanent barges that float out there. And that's the feed barge. It's a live-in barge. Crew does like week or 2 week cycles out there typically. And they're working 24/7, then they come back and get a week off, and they rotate like that. So they link up like 12, 15, 18 of these pens that they can feed from this centralized barge. They can monitor everything right on the farm. If there's issues, they can deal with it in minutes. It's really the best way to go about it. So with this setup, you can have, and they typically do this in long fjords, right? You got really strong water currents in fjords. And they're also protected from some of the harshest ocean storms. It's kind of a win-win, at least for fish farming. So you can have hundreds of thousands of salmon in there. They're schooling fish. The reason a lot of the farmed fish out there are schooling fish is because you can do this. You can use pens. It makes sense,
Right.
as opposed to, a lot of people say, oh, why can't we farm like blue whales or sharks and release them?
I've never heard that, but now that you say it, it just made me laugh. Why can't we just farm blue whales? It's so come on.
I've gotten that a few times. Yeah, maybe made me laugh. I like the mindset, right? But so circling on back on the sea lice. So you have hundreds of thousands of fish here. That's not abnormal in these locations, right? Those fjords often lead up to rivers, and that's where wild salmon will run. They'll head up those streams, they'll spawn, they'll die, and then the juveniles their babies will come back out in the next season.
Assuming they don't get eaten by a bear.
Yeah, most of them get eaten. It's like less than 1% survive that. And it's also like a less than 1% survival on the way up. The parents don't make it either. And because of that, they're a fragile species, right, to any sort of changes. So damming, any sort of infrastructure on the waterway, that the actual stream itself that can physically prevent the salmon from moving up the waterways, it can have serious consequences, because suddenly these fish, they return from the oceans, and if only 1% made it before there was human involvement, they're not going to make it if there's a dam or if there's a road. Okay. Things like that. So they're a fragile species in that respect. Now, with farms, when the fish head out to the farms, they start on land-based facilities. We grow them in freshwater land-based hatcheries, and then you move them out to the ocean. So they all go out perfectly clean. That's something that the industry takes a lot of pride in, and that's really important. They're not infected with sea lice from the start or any diseases. They're not bringing things out to the ocean. Everything that they get in the ocean, in infections, whether it be macro parasites like sea lice or viruses, anything like that, bacteria, they get from the ocean. So wild salmon swimming by or near the cages release sea lice into the farms, which then propagate sea lice within them. And then a lot of the controversy arises because now you have a pen with a lot of fish in it. And if it gets sea lice to an unhealthy level, there's some studies that show that can release back onto wild salmon. Now, sea lice are not a death sentence to salmon. As I said, there's a healthy limit, right? So if you pull a salmon out of the water and there's 3 or 4 sea lice on it, that's not really a problem. But the problem is that people, when they pull those wild salmon out and they have sea lice on them, that's linked directly to farms. People look at that and say, this is caused by the farm.
A lot of those people have never gone fishing.
Now, yes, farms do and have propagated sea lice at unhealthy levels. It's a very new industry. Aquaculture has only really been around at this commercial level for 30 or 40 years, and it's changing so fast that it's really hard to keep up with. So if you look up studies from the early 2000s, which are some of the most prominent ones online today, you'll see that there's a lot of people are linking wild salmon die-offs and the mass losses at sea to the farms and those sea lice contaminations. But we move ahead 10, 15 years from those 2004, 2005 studies to, for instance, in 2017, Norway did a huge study and found that, this wasn't really the case. Those salmon were dying off because of all these other factors that influence this delicate species. And we can prove this because in areas where we've had farms before that they've been pulled, those wild runs have not recovered in some places. And then in others where the farms have stayed, they have recovered completely, or even up to unhealthy levels. We have unhealthy levels of certain species of salmon in certain parts of the world. So it's a really complex issue, right? The wild versus farmed and how they're interacting with each other. And there isn't an easy answer of this one's better than that. This is causing that. No, it's a natural ecosystem that we're trying our best not to touch, but we're still there. And unlike traditional land-based agriculture, where we kind of just took the plows and pushed every living thing out of the way, we don't do that in the ocean, right? We take these little, the actual footprint of a fish farm is many times smaller than what we see on land. So we're keeping nature around us, and that has consequences, right? So the sea lice problem, that leads into what I would deem as like the third biggest problem people have, or people claim to have, with aquaculture and fish farms. And that's the use of antibiotics.
That's what I was just about to ask, because that's what I hear. It's like, oh, they have sea lice, so they're half antibiotics now. Like they just pump them full of it. I hear that all the time. So
first and foremost, antibiotics aren't really going to do much against sea lice. That's a macroparasite.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. And the whole thing of dumping pesticides in the water. What? So, you got to kind of read through the weeds on a lot of those sorts of comments and accusations. Now, in decades past, there was a utilization of antibiotics to a degree that was unhealthy. Not to people, that was never really the case, but it was to a point where it was having, it was too much. It was going into the fish and coming out of the fish and impacting the ecosystems around it. And that raises concerns of antibiotic resistance development. And just generally, it's not healthy for the fish or any organism to just be that, that medicated. Now, antibiotics have, in salmon and most species of farmed fish, gone away all but entirely. They're really expensive. So if the farms can do anything not to use them, they will. So with the introduction of vaccines, we have fish vaccines, and that's been doing incredible things to prevent bacterial infections and viral infections.
But does it cause fish autism?
I was just saying, the fish autism is a huge problem. I was just thinking that.
It is. Oh. you look
How
at
bad
fish
is
in
it
the eye,
like one guy came up with a terrible study, and now like everyone, just as soon as you hear vaccine, you're like, it's causing fish autism. That's where everybody's brain.
I mean, vaccines in fish have propelled the industry to a new height of sustainability, right? As well as because a lot of therapies are chemotherapies, and that's, to people out there, that doesn't mean like fighting cancer. Chemotherapy is just the use of essentially a chemical, right? There's also mechanical treatments that farms use nowadays. Things like if you take a fish that's in salt water and has some sea lice on it, and you put it in water with less salinity, it's more fresh water, those sea lice don't survive. But the fish are fine. So that's a mechanical treatment. Okay. Other things like hydrogen peroxide, very low levels of hydrogen peroxide can work wonders. As we know, we put hydrogen peroxide on our wounds, and that helps. Same thing with aquatic species.
And if none of those work, you bring in the fish chiropractors.
Yeah, you get the priests out. Yeah,
adjust their C1s.
That's what it was. Yeah, we just did. That's great.
What I think is like most, it's not talked about enough, is none of this happens just willy-nilly, right? The use of antibiotics is a last resort, and whenever you have to use a chemotherapy like that, you need to get a fish veterinarian involved, and those are real people, real job. It's really cool, fish vets, and it's highly regulated. It's as if you're going to the doctor, but arguably more intensive. Because they're diagnosing a population, not just one fish.
People really don't realize that, you have to get the vet to actually prescribe that.
Yeah, no, if a fish is getting any kind of treatment, that's a prescription. They brought the experts in, the fish nerds.
I think it's just easier for people, though, on like especially social media. You just have to make it simple, right? Like, farm fish bad, wild fish good. Like that's something like that. And in reality, right, like, we wouldn't be able to sustain a full, like if everyone just switched to eating wild fish. Like correct me if I'm wrong here. That's not possible. Like that would be like everybody saying like, oh, we just eat grass-fed beef. Like we don't have enough, resources to make that happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're spot on. We haven't, as humanity entirely around the world, we haven't been catching more wild fish year over year for at least 30 years. All of the new seafood on the market to supply our population,
Right.
our global population, comes from aquaculture. There's now more farmed seafood on the market than there is wild caught. And that's a good thing, because if we tried to take the same volume we do
Right.
with
Just
if
out
you
of
take
the ocean,
aquaculture out
like
of the
I think
equation,
that would cause some problems.
Just a
it
little.
would, it would be over. And there's some programs that people, I don't talk about this much on my channel, simply because I've focused mainly on aquaculture, and hatcheries are not, I mean, they are aquaculture, but it's not, the end result is different, right? So for instance, the West Coast of the US and Canada, as well as some other partnering countries in the Pacific Oceans, have massive hatchery programs where they raise salmon by the billions. I think last year it was altogether in the Pacific, it was over 5 billion fish were raised and released into the Pacific. And that is to support a couple things. It helps keep our wild population strong, even in times when climate change is really affecting our oceans and those fish are struggling to get back up the streams. It keeps the numbers high. That's also what's artificially inflating our entire wild salmon fishery. For instance, on the East Coast, all we have are Atlantic salmon over here, and that's not a commercial fishery. It's illegal. They are an endangered species, and that's because we don't really know how to do a hatchery program for them with the success that we see with the Pacific species.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
So all of the wild-caught salmon you're getting, if you're in North America, is coming from the West Coast, typically Alaska or British Columbia, and over 80% of that came from hatcheries to begin with. So even the whole wild-caught thing is...
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No, that's half farmed. They just let it go and then catch it back later. So, and that's not a bad thing. We need to be doing those sort of, hatch and release programs. And they do that beyond salmon. That's true for a lot of species. Everything from seahorses for restoration to coral projects. There's a lot of coral restoration where they grow these polyps on land to get them up to these little kind of coral nuggets and then go plant them in coral reefs that are struggling. So hatcheries are not new or unique to that.
Extinct here in Alberta because of overfishing, because we have a lot of fishermen in Alberta. And if you ever look at the population charts for all the waters in Alberta, like 50 years ago, everything's like green, everything's looking good. You go to today, red.
Yeah.
As a species,
it's
we
a
are very
problem.
good at going to a place and just obliterating the population of whatever it is we want to consume for food. Like that's everything, like seals, whatever. There's all, it's historically humans come in, we kill everything, we destroy the population, we go, what else can we find? So at least with farming, we're able to control this, a little bit, man.
Oh, that's our specialty is, plowing it out, putting out a parking lot in a Walmart and then asking where everything went.
Yep.
But I mean, aquaculture and fisheries are really closely linked. It's one cannot function without the other, not just because the market demands so much seafood, but because they require each other. I mean, as I said, most of the West Coast relies on those hatcheries. Aquaculture also relies on wild fisheries. It's an important part to a carnivorous feed to have portion of that feed be made up of wild caught or reprocessed fish waste. By that I mean, trimmings, leftovers. Cut a fish
now
down,
that you say that, can I just divert a little bit? Because I always hear fucking you shouldn't eat tilapia because it's the worst thing ever for you because all they eat is pig shit. What's up with that? I know it's for the most part not really true, but help me out here a little bit with it.
Have you been getting those ads? I don't know what company it is because I scroll away immediately, but it's like, we don't want you to think that feeding your dog our food is spoiling them. And it's like this gourmet meal prepared for your dog of filet mignon and just foraged vegetables.
I don't know if I have.
I'm not a dog person, so I don't get dog commercials.
I don't know. It's inundating my feed. And it's that concept of it's a pelletized and dried feed. So it looks, most fish feeds and aquaculture feeds in general look just like fish food. And a lot of it looks like dog food. And that's the concept. It is not, right? Just because it's a conspicuous brown little pellets doesn't mean that it's not a nutritionally advanced little chunk of dog food. So tilapia are a fantastic species for aquaculture and the world more broadly, because they can really survive anything.
Okay,
right?
so
These
they're
fish,
they're the bizarro world salmon. They're they're very
you
hardy.
can do backyard tilapia. You get a little 55-gallon drum, and you can.
So that's
you
why
can do
they're
backyard
50 cents a
aquaculture.
pound at the stores, because
Exactly,
they're like the
yeah.
cheapest fish, because they can survive anything.
Yeah, and they eat a lot too. They're really, I'd call them fugivores, but a lot of people would say they're kind of just scavengers, I guess. So the feeds can be varied. So you can use really, really cheap, leftovers from the agricultural industry, bits and pieces here and there. They find really creative ways to hit the nutritional requirements of the fish from industry excess. So we have soy coming out the wazoo.
Right.
Great use for soys and livestock feeds.
Gotcha. But so they're not just getting pig poop. That's that. It's a little bit, because
Not
that's.
that I know.
Swear to God,
No,
I
I
don't
heard
know
it
how many
was
times I've
chicken
heard
poop.
that. I hear it's always shit. Like just tilapias just eat shit. And if you, I always, what was it? Thomas DeLauer, or the fuck that guy's name is. You are what you ate is what he always says. And you're like, tilapias eat shit. So do you want to eat shit? And I'm like, that. There's a bunch of leaps here, and I don't know if any of them connect. But like
here's
tilapia
the
is
thing,
okay
right?
to
Is
eat.
like, even if they were eating shit, I don't think that they are. Got to be honest with you. That seems like a really poor use of really strong manure. But even if they were, right, a lot of people look at shrimp as like the cockroaches of the sea. They're reprocessing that and turning it into valuable proteins, fats, and carbohydrates.
Exactly, yeah.
In their bodies. So, you are what you eat only goes so far. I could eat a bag of Doritos for a week. I don't think that makes me Doritos.
Well, I mean,
As long as it's the
by
purple
Thomas
ones.
DeLauer's logic, if I eat some lettuce that I grew in my garden using some manure as fertilizer, I'm also eating shit.
But no, that only applies to animals, okay? Because there's rules or something. I don't know, man. But I heard that, and I was just like, that's a weird hill, because you are what you eat is already weird, and then you just was like, can I add another weird layer to this anyway? What's up with shrimp though? I like shrimp a lot. Are we going with shrimp? Is there anything we should know about shrimp?
So shrimp definitely have their issues too, and some of them are more egregious problems. A lot of shrimp comes in from countries where the transparency is not apparent and it is difficult to trace. This is a problem across seafood. If you're buying, for instance, red snapper in the US, I believe there's a 60% chance that it's not red snapper, just because companies will take advantage of the fact that you don't know what a red snapper is or looks like or tastes like. And it's a premium fish. Now, that problem extends throughout the seafood chain because people want to turn a quick buck. But some of the more egregious problems with shrimp come from the countries where they have massive land-based farms. So they plow out great swaths of land. And this is places that are fragile and biodiverse in poor communities. So you'll see them in countries that are tropical. So they're, you have these coastal rainforests that become shrimp farms. That is not good. And there's also some issues with the labor that goes into that shrimp farming. It's a labor intensive industry in a country that doesn't have great labor laws. That's not true across the board. There are easy ways to trace your shrimp if you buy from the right people and the right or the right processors. And there's countries where shrimp is farmed in very sustainable ways. The U.S. is one of them, and we have shrimp here. I saw some shrimp farms in Saudi Arabia recently, and that was a great utilization of completely barren desert. They weren't plowing rainforest; they were digging sand out of the way, I guess. And I like that. It was a minimally impactful way to go about it. So shrimp does have its issues, absolutely. That does not mean avoid all shrimp, all farm shrimp. That means
it's the shrimp calling. Hold on 1 second. You're talking shit about me. Hold on.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. It's like there isn't like an easy answer to it. You really.
Okay.
That's what my channels are for, right? It's like educate on it.
Right. would you say to look for shrimp maybe that's grown in the U.S. or certain other areas? I mean, would you recommend looking for that?
Yeah, so obviously I don't expect anybody to know every farm. There are tens of thousands of companies farming in almost every country in the world.
But just general, like, hey, maybe look for this.
Yeah. So the things to look out for, because that is a problem, right? Nobody could possibly know this. There are third-party companies that are essentially watchdog companies that offer certifications to companies, to farmers. So the ones to look out for in wild fisheries is MSC, Marine Stewardship Council certification. It's a really laborious process to get, and they're really thorough. It's expensive, but it's a thorough process. Now, for aquaculture, there's two that I would recommend looking out for. Best Aquaculture Practices, BAP, and the Aquaculture Stewardship Council. A lot of acronyms coming out here, ASC. Right. So you'll see those.
Because those are long fucking things. I'm not going to remember them. So yeah, I need the BAP or whatever. I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
BAP
not
and ASC. Yeah. So if you look out for those check marks on, like, for instance, Whole Foods, they require those sorts of things.
Okay.
A lot of places do. A lot of restaurants will boast about it because it's a great achievement to get, for instance, like 4-star BAP certification is incredibly difficult. There's only a few companies that can pull that off, so they are proud of it. Same thing with ASC certification.
Is some sushi restaurants that are certified to serve the fish they actually said they served. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I've had a couple times order like salmon at a sushi place, and they come out with something and it's like, that's not salmon, that's tuna. Don't try to cheat me. I know my fish.
Like, what do you mean?
Oh, I'm sure. Like you were just talking about how like red snapper or whatever is always like, if you don't know, especially white people, it's like, hey, here you go. Like, this is this. Oh, sure. Yeah, this sounds good. I don't know. We'll just accept it. It's fine. It's all fish.
That's actually, especially with sushi. You ever had escalar? It's delicious. Honestly, it's so good. It's a white fish.
Can I ask you something? Let me ask you, because you know a thing or two about fish, I've heard.
I might.
What would you recommend? Because what I always hear from people is like, I hate fish. Like, I just like, I tell people like fish is great. Like, good, mono and polyunsaturated fats. We're eating a lot of land animals. I'm not saying, like you have to cut out, but like maybe introduce some fish into your diet if you can, or just, some sort of sea life. What would you recommend for people who are like, kind of, I don't really know much about fish? Like, is there like more of a fish that doesn't taste so fishy? It's more bland, or just something for someone getting into fish? What would you recommend?
Yeah, a starter fish. Yeah, that's
starter. Yes,
it's always fun.
A starter fish.
Starter fish. So, I mean, salmon's the most popular fish out there, at least where I am. It's not a starter fish. That's a relatively fishy fish. I love it.
Yeah, it is.
Really,
especially
fatty.
If you leave the belly fat on.
Ooh, yeah. But I wouldn't recommend that as like, if you're a bit squeamish on the texture, the taste,
because that's what most people see as salmon. They're like, oh, I hate salmon, so I hate fish. But like, there's other fish that aren't as fishy.
Yeah. So typically, white fish tend to be milder. So by that, I literally mean like the meat is white. It's kind of a classification of fish that aren't salmon or tuna. Okay. Things like cod, haddock. That's a great way to start.
Is that white? Is that a white fish?
Tilapia is a white fish. Yeah. A little more flavorful, I would say. Or if you have a big budget, you could go all in on something like halibut, right? That's more of a steak fish. It's a lot meatier, or mahi-mahi.
Mahi, I've had mahi-mahi. I like fishy, that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, but it's much firmer. A lot of people have issues with like the flakiness of fish, and you're going to get flaky cod. That's the point. So if you want something much firmer, go for a steak fish, like one of those bigger ones.
I need to start writing this stuff down. Okay, steak fish, firmer fish, mahi-mahi, cod, flaky white, less pungent.
I'll clip this specific part out for you when I'm editing, and just
need to put it. I'm gonna we need just like this clip, because I always get people saying like, I don't know fish. I'm like, okay, what about okay,
fish are hard.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, like I kind of go to the seafood section. I'm like, I know salmon and I like that, so I'm gonna get that. I don't really know much. I know too. I don't like crabs and lobsters and stuff. I don't like the shellfish besides shrimp. I love shrimp, but any other shellfish. Let me tell you something. I have a deep burning distaste for things like oysters and clams and I guess I could do mussels. I still don't. They're fine. But like all those other ones, like especially oysters, I love to hate how I hate them. I don't like them. I really don't.
Is it
like
because
them.
like shooting a raw oyster is a bit like a loogie?
They're sea boogers. That's what people call it. They're sea boogers. Okay. I mentioned in a video I don't like them, and I had a bunch of people stitch me and just be like, this is why they're good. You're getting the wrong oysters. I'm like, I don't like. I hate looking at them. They're like, oh, if you fry them, they're better. You could fry a boot, and I'd probably eat it. Like you say, you fry anything, it's a lot better, but that doesn't make it good. Like
I gotta get you out to a mussel farm because they have like little tongues and they got these like hairs. It's alien. That almost turned me off of mussels.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, because I know they're really good bivalves. They're really good. They're like great for you. So like, if you like those things, scallops. I hate scallops too. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I mean the aquaculture of bivalves.
Aren't they one of the most sustainable
oysters?
like things in terms of like farming an animal like bivalves?
Oh no, it's beneficial. It's one of the only kinds of farming that is truly beneficial like that, where you're putting something in the water, you wait, it filters the water, and then you pull it out.
Right. Yeah, because they filter the water. Yeah. I've seen like, I don't know, in museums, there's shit about that. They're like, it takes this many, I don't know, oysters or whatever to filter. What are the best ones at filtering? Mussels? They all do it? I have no idea.
They all do it, but oysters, I think they can do like 50 gallons a day. There's some time lapses on like YouTube. They put them in like a murky, muddy fish tank, and then 12 hours later, it's like you could drink it.
See, you eat what you ate. That's the problem, though. They're eating all this gross stuff, and that's why I don't like them. They're filtering all this stuff, and I feel like I'm eating the stuff. I don't like them. I don't like oysters. But if you do like, they're really good in general, and they're healthy and clean things. So, yeah.
They're starting to find new ways to use them too. I saw at Trader Joe's recently they had canned oysters. So it was like little oyster meat in olive oil, which was new to me. Tried it out.
Sounds so good and delicious and not gross at all. I can't, and like anchovies.
I think I'll stick to the canned tuna.
Listen, I can't. I can do canned tuna. I can't. The people I know anchovies and mackerel and all these fish are really, they're fatty fish, omega-3s, yada yada yada. I don't like them. I just, so it's okay to not like, find a fish that you can actually do, because those ones I know they're cheap too. I get it. People tell me to eat them. I don't like them.
Oh, I mean, if we were completely logical species like that, we wouldn't be eating anything but little rinky-dink little tiny things in the ocean, rats on land.
We'd be eating oysters and we'd be eating anchovies.
And cockroaches and crickets.
I don't know, oyster or cockroach. I have to think for a second. It depends how the cockroach is cooked. Is it like fried? Are they both fried? Because then I might go no.
Well, if you're buying it in America, it's probably fried.
Oh, I don't like any of it. But yeah, find a fish or bivalve or shellfish or whatever it is.
As I alluded to earlier, if you are having some trouble with salmon, that darker, thinner flab underneath, that's where really a lot of the fat, fishy flavor is. You can like cut that off, give it to your dog.
Yeah, doing like taking salmon, pulling all the bones, take the skin off, scrape all the dark meat off. It's basically like an Uncrustable at that point, but it's healthy. So.
What's your favorite way to make a fish besides Uncrustabling them?
Just taking it,
it's
completely wiping it. Yeah, I mean that's like, to everyone listening, like if you don't like fish, you've tried it before, there's a good chance it just wasn't cooked right. Fish, you can't treat it like chicken or something. You can overdo chicken and it's still edible. You overdo some fish and it's a brick.
It's cat food. It's cat food.
So you really got to watch
cat
that.
Won't eat it even. It's just, it's done.
It's bad cat food. It's bad cat food.
There you go. It's bad cat food.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody like follows me or wants to look at my channels, you're not going to find like any cooking or recipes. Because I'm not a good cook. I just got out of college last year. I do air fryers and microwaves, and when I'm feeling really crazy, I get out the fry pan.
That's pretty good. I mean, that's all like, how long are you cooking in the air fryer for? Like, what are you doing? So
I take a serving of salmon, which for me is like north of 16 ounces.
Okay, so a pound of salmon,
Air fryer,
got it.
425 for 15 minutes. And that's like on the medium rare side.
Yeah.
Okay, because I
Sounds about
definitely
right.
need more on the rare side. Once it hits this point, and I'm just like, I can't even eat this. Like, give it to my dogs. Oh,
Yeah. The instant that you touch it with a fork, it should just lightly flake open on you.
yeah. Once it becomes
Exactly.
all like
Past
white
that,
and stuff,
it's done.
I can't order. I don't even order it at a restaurant anymore because I just don't trust it. Unless it's like a really good seafood place that's known for their fish. If you're just at a restaurant and they're like, "Oh, we also have this," no. You guys are cooking the lamb and shit for most people, and then you just throw fucking salmon in there at the same temperature and fucking time or whatever, and it's not good.
That's restaurants. I always go for like a meaty fish, right? Tuna or swordfish or halibut or something that's got like you can treat it like a steak.
Yeah, I think mahi. I remember the notes.
That's a good one.
Would you say to like, is there anything that you just in general would recommend to watch out for in terms of fish? I don't know. Just like, I don't know if a concern is the right word, but something maybe shy away from. I don't. Well, yeah, bones. Well, I know with anchovies you can eat the bones. People keep telling me to eat anchovies. I keep coming back to this, but I don't like them. Would you recommend anything to just be aware of in terms of like fish? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to a lot of the land meats. That's what I call them, like chicken, pork, beef, that people are more familiar with, right? So they know what free range or organic means when it comes to that. People don't know what BAP means when it comes to seafood or dolphin safe. Like,
right.
Is this dolphin now? I don't know. It's not. I promise you. Friend of the sea. That's a really good certification. All these things that us in the industry, like, we're really proud of and we know about, doesn't really translate to most consumers. So I would look out for those sorts of certifications on your seafood.
Give us a clip
Does
that
it
we
have
can
that
like
traceability?
take this and then just post it. So what are all the certifications?
You got 60 seconds,
BAP.
go.
You got a few seconds. Give me the certifications.
Oh, if you go on some of those like premium seafood websites and you go to the bottom, it's like a dozen. It's just a big list, which is great. But it's like, what does that mean? Who knows? So what it really comes down to is traceability, right? Do you know where that fish came from? Whether it's wild caught or farmed, it's all about, if you know where it came from, then you can spend 5 minutes to figure out, okay, this is from Norway and it's from one of the big salmon companies there. Let me check out, their strategy, go to their website, see their certifications. Oh, okay, I can trust that. So if you can just start to begin that traceability and the transparency train, kind of help yourself know at least what country that fish came from or whatever it was. That's a great way to start to know that what you're getting is both good for you and good for the environment. Nowadays, we're lucky in the US and Canada. It can be difficult to get your hands on stuff that is going to be detrimental to your health in like one serving. So you can typically trust a lot of the larger retailers, even like small fishmongers who are, kind of for their communities. And the USDA, the FDA, and NOAA all work together to make sure that everything coming into this country is as traced as they can get it. So that kind of stuff has been overhauled year on year. So a lot of that wasn't true even 5 years ago, but it is today. So you can really trust a lot of those, our government agencies. You don't have to be all like conspiracy theoried about it.
I know.
Crazy statement.
Fed.
I know all the stuff. Usually it's a chiropractor calling me at that. I know we just had chiropractors on last week. Those ones are good. The rest of them though, fuck them, Jesus.
Yeah. No, I mean, most seafood you can trust, what people really get like scared about is things like the people who are like really concerned about sea lice and antibiotics. They're more of, that is a very small minority of people who know about those issues of the past and are raising them today. What I see most of the time with just everyday consumers is mercury, heavy metals.
Right.
So you as an adult need to make the decision on how comfortable you are with the levels of mercury in basically all of your food. Some people choose to live like hyper organically, and that's great. Grow your own stuff, do your own thing. Mercury is just out there. It's not just in farmed or wild seafood. It's not just in seafood. It's in everything.
Yeah. Even
however,
the stuff you grow yourself.
Exactly. There's some really great government. I keep saying government, but there's some really great resources out there that have they break it down super easily. All the popular kinds of fish and seafood, whether it's best choice, decent choice, or don't eat too much kind of things when it comes to mercury. I personally have done a lot of deep research on this subject, methylmercury in seafood. Yeah. And this is why I say to people, use your own judgment on this stuff, because there's a lot of evidence that methylmercury in seafood that has high selenium, which is most non-mammal things in the water, is not of concern to adults.
If you want to learn more about this, we talked about this with Dr. Sarah Ballantyne. I don't know what episode that is, 69, whatever it is. And
probably was 69.
It probably was 69, whatever. And we talked about this with her quite a bit. And yeah, so that's the idea, is that methylmercury is what is a problem in our system because it binds to selenium, and we have all these selenoenzymes. But with fish, even take tuna is one of the most classic examples. It has enough selenium that the methylmercury is already bound to the selenium in the fish. So it's unlikely to cause any issues. But obviously, there's risk with everything. But in terms the benefits outweigh the risks. You always have to look at cost benefit, right? Eating fish is beneficial for your health. So it's
delicious.
And delicious. You don't have to. I mean, if you're a vegan and you don't want to eat any fish, I've heard that even vegans will sometimes, some vegans will eat bivalves. They do consider they're actually not even, it's a whole interesting, I fell down a rabbit hole one time. As that YouTube thing, you're talking about, sometimes we're so someone would say oh yeah, you can eat mussels because they're not actually sentient. It's interesting. I'm not an expert on all that. But, yeah, it's just the benefit of eating fish just outweighs the small risk. So unless you're eating shark, and some type of some type of swordfish may have more methylmercury than selenium, could be potential, but you'd have to eat a lot of it and often. So
one of the original studies on methylmercury in seafood and kind of the scare that came out of that, it was in the 80s, and it was in the Faroe Islands, Norway, way up north. That's where they still do pilot whales. They eat them pretty regularly. And pilot whales are not fish. They do not have that same concentration of the same or more selenium than methylmercury in their systems. So they were experiencing some issues due to the high consumption of pilot whale.
That makes sense.
If you are eating pilot whale regularly, please stop for more reasons than just mercury. But I don't think most of us are. So
most of us are eating tuna and salmon, not pilot whale.
Except for you, Todd. I know you're listening.
He's just with just shoveling pilot whale for the third time today into his mouth. Shut up. It's my favorite. Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, yeah. So find what fish you like, I guess, right? And just, work it into your diet. Don't overcook it and don't overthink it.
Yeah, I never think about any of that stuff. I mean, at this point, I know the retailers I trust. I go to them. I buy fish. I eat it every day.
Yeah.
I try anything. I'll eat anything from the ocean just for the hell of it. There's some really good
just for the halibut
seaweeds.
Halibut. Nice. There you go. What about that fish that's deadly? What's the puffer fish? Yeah, puffers? That Japanese have to, and they cut it so it doesn't kill you, but it could. You ever done that?
No. Well, I'm still here, so
yeah.
Not yet. It's on the list. I'm gonna do it.
I hear there's a couple restaurants in New York City that still do it. They're trained by chefs in Japan or something to cut the fish perfectly, so they don't have any of the. I would not
want that responsibility as a chef.
I know, right?
It's not worth it.
Probably have to sign a waiver before you eat there.
There's insurance involved in that. If I have to sign a waiver to eat fish, I don't want to eat the fish.
I'll tell you the worst fish I ever had. It was, I was up in Iceland 8 years ago, and there was this guy who catches Greenland shark and ferments it in this little stable out back. And I got a tour of what he was doing, and then I got to try some. Fermented Greenland shark is abhorrent. It was one of the worst things
I'm
I've
sure
ever
the
eaten.
smell couldn't have been that great going into it. So
sharks are like a really ancient species in a sense. They pee through their skin. So when they ferment, they just have this ammonia that's working its way out of it, and the whole place reeks of piss. It's like you're at like a ball game and you go to the silos out back. Oh,
and what's amazing is it's still better than oysters.
We got to get you out to this one guy in Iceland. I swear to God.
Oh shit.
But yeah, so I mean that's my fish world. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but I do have some cool news, and I have been doing this whole content creating thing just around my work schedule. I burn all my PTO. Sometimes I can like get my girlfriend to come along on trips with me, and it works out, right? Because, but I've been doing it just as like a part-time thing. But at the end of this month, I'm moving to Scotland, the Highlands actually. And I'm doing it full time. I'm giving it a shot here, and we'll see if I can pull it off. But I've been running the books, running the numbers, and I'm just about maybe there, but it's worth a shot. And I am trying to dive at this whole like aquaculture education, seafood confidence and consumers thing full time, because it needs to be done. It really does.
That's exciting.
That's awesome. So tell people, where can they, so give people like all of the things to
Let
find.
us know where to find you. We got to watch all this stuff that's going to be coming out.
I'll be like in and around Fort William. I'll be moving around a lot. Not that most people won't know where that is. It's in between. It's under Loch Lochy. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. I know exactly I know exactly where that is.
No, I'll be in like the middle of nowhere. But if you go follow my channels, TikTok and Instagram, it's the same thing, Sibley Aqua. You can follow along with that, see how it goes. I'm doing this kind of like both independently and like with a lot of farms, because what I do, I have to, I don't just sit around and make, I can't sit and like make content in my room like I used to. I have to go places, right? I burn all my PTO on this, all my free time. I'm in like, if I have a free weekend, it's up in Maine because I got a lot of oysters. And if I can pull off like a few days off of work, I'll go to Mexico or Canada, wherever I can talk somebody into letting me come see what they're doing. So it's kind of like a different style that way. I wish I could do YouTube, but alas, not yet. That's hard.
Oh yeah. No,
all the editing and
it's.
All my videos are vertical too. That's another problem.
I know there's a lot of problems with YouTube, and I've thought about it many times, and I still haven't gotten into it. One day, that's kind of a one-day thing,
One day when Oakley actually lets you have some free time.
Holy shit, that kid! Why is it so bad? Why? How? But anyway, So I mean, so those are the two places, Sibley Aqua, that people can find you.
Yeah, that's me. I tried to get James Sibley. And I was even like DMing the guy who has it, and not even for sale. Not that I was like, I have like $200. I was in college, right? I was like, you can have half of that. I was like really desperate. But no luck from, I guess, OG James Sibley or Sibley Aqua.
The Aqua, no, I mean, that's good. That's good. Well, all right. Well, then give us a fun fish fact to end with. Whatever you like. Give us, because you talk about fish all the time.
Aren't they all fun? What are you talking about?
But you're constantly talking about fish.
Give us an unfun fish fact.
Any sort of, give us the fish fact that you want. Anyone that you want.
Oh, this is a great question. Fish fact.
He's on the spot.
I have so many. I'm like paralyzed by choice.
Well, we're going to hate it if it's not good. So there you go. I just want to...
I know. I'm working on it.
In moderation, we'll be right back as James figures out what he's going to say.
It's like, what's interesting about fish? Maybe everything I've ever made content on. So I guess I'm moving to the UK, and I have to be careful because they have some rules around fish and walking around with it in public. And it is illegal to walk around with salmon in a suspicious circumstance. And this is not just an outdated law.
It has to say, like it says, suspicious circumstance.
It says suspicious circumstances. And it is not an outdated thing. Somebody was fined for this like last month. They had a salmon hidden up their sleeve. This is a real thing.
Okay, so wait, is it just salmon or should all fish? I'm sorry, like
Just salmon.
Just salmon.
You can
So
be suspicious with anything else.
Tilapia, I could have one of those just sticking out of my pants, just like tail flapping.
You can be as weird as you want with tilapia.
No problem.
Yeah.
But salmon.
If it's salmon, though, they're on you. They're on you.
All right.
Good
Well, to our
know.
UK listeners,
Okay, well.
I want video of you doing some weird shit with salmon in the streets just to see if, just to
There's
see
a
if you
whole
can.
there's a lot of
Liam will
YouTube guys
pay
who
the
do
fine.
that. Yeah.
I will pay the fine. It depends on how many fines. If it's one or two, I could deal with that. I don't want to be
You just roped yourself into
hundreds.
a world of trouble.
Somebody's gonna really hit me up. Like, I did this weird thing with a fish and I totally got fined, like immediately. As soon as I stepped out of my house.
The real question is, why is somebody walking around with a salmon up their sleeve?
Why is the law in place? How did it get there? There's so many questions.
Well, the law is less fun, but it's like the conservation laws. If somebody's walking around with it suspiciously, they probably caught it illegally.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. It's more fun if you just leave it off as suspicious salmon is
Got
illegal.
it. Well, so if it's like hanging from a fishing pole, like a hook on a fishing pole, they're like, I don't know about that. You probably caught that somewhere you shouldn't have been.
Who knows? It's the UK.
I choose to picture people just pulling out salmon and dueling with them.
Dueling with
There's an awesome, I forget what YouTuber it is. He's a UK guy, and he just walked around London with like a 20-pound fish trying to get fined, or arrested, or whatever.
Interesting.
It's a great YouTube video.
I would pick
Take
a
look.
swordfish because that seems dangerous. Like,
Walk
people
around
would
with
be
that.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. Although, aren't they like 800 pounds? Like, aren't swordfish like massive?
It can be.
How big is a
They can get
swordfish?
I think the biggest one was 1,500 pounds.
What?
Most of them today are like 100, 200. Those monsters don't exist anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. So I could carry like 100-pound fish. I could carry like that would be a challenge, but I could do that. Imagine someone pulls out a salmon in a duel. I pull out a swordfish. Boom. Don't bring a salmon to a swordfish fight like they always. Or
Darn straight.
do bring a swordfish to a salmon fight as they always say.
Yes, in the UK, of course.
Yeah.
The classic British saying.
The classic
100-pound swordfish flopping out your pants.
Oh gosh.
Hey, wasn't that a great time listening to the podcast? You were just, I'm assuming you were just listening to In Moderation. So if you go ahead and hit the 5-star button, is that a thing? The like button?
That's a thing.
No.
Yep.
The like button
5
on
stars.
YouTube. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button. Not the dislike button. That's a bad button. The
Bad
like
button.
button.
Don't touch.
Hit all the other buttons. The share. You can go check out
all those things.
Subscribe. Go check out our Patreon. Yeah. We do have a Patreon. It's free to join if you want, or you could give us some money. That'd be really cool, like $1 or $2. It doesn't matter. Whatever you have.
That's where you'll find all the news for this.
We're super appreciative. You can find all sorts of other stuff there. We do giveaways, I think, sometimes,
Sometimes.
all that good. Yeah, absolutely. So, peace.